expect something like this to happen, but nothing prepares you for that moment. I was down on the street, and at first I thought there was something wrong with me. I felt a bit faint and my legs wobbly, and then within seconds, looking at everybody else around me, some of whom were dropping to the floor or holding on to things, leaning up against walls and holding on, you could instantly realize that it was an earthquake. And
of the tsunami wave of damage done, what's the government's emergency response looking like right now?
Well, immediately planes were up in the air and helicopters looking at the scene up there. Troops have also been deployed, an emergency response pushing into the harbour there and sweeping across farmland, taking buildings, villages with it into paddy fields and even inundating the airport in Sendai. A complete assessment is going to take quite some time, the Japanese government says. At the moment, the confirmed death toll is fairly low. They're talking about 32, but it looks likely to rise. Was
there any warning, Roland? As again, we see the pictures of the wave sweeping across, and you've described how it's gone into Sendai Airport. Were people prepared for this wave coming?
It's possible that they might have had a little bit of warning. This country has very extensive infrastructure in place. There are loudspeakers in cities and towns that relay warnings. But when you look at where the epicenter was, it wasn't actually that far off the coast of Honshu, Japan's main island. And tsunamis travel extremely quickly. Over the next few hours, it's going to go over the entire Pacific Ocean, halfway around the world. So I think if people got a warning at all, it wouldn't have been very long.
There have been specific stories about the nuclear power plants in the north of the country. Some have suspended operations. One has reported a problem with cooling systems. What do you know about that, Roland?
Pacific Islands. That seems to be just half a metre high. The tsunami we saw pictures of in Japan was 7 metres, so according to that it seems to be dying down. But I stress it does depend on local conditions, the local geography. What we'll be looking very closely at is the impact on the remaining Pacific islands in the next few hours, particularly the very small islands which have got very, very high sea levels. There's not much difference between sea level and the highest most point. They could be completely washed over.
The Red Cross was warning that they believed some of the wave may be higher than very low-lying islands in the Pacific. That would be catastrophic.
Absolutely. So we need to keep a close eye on that. The next major area that could be hit is Hawaii. The tsunamis are due there between an hour to 1.5 hours' time. They're bracing themselves for the worst. They're evacuating coastal regions. So it is just a matter of waiting and watching to see just the impact this wave of water travelling at 500 miles an hour is going to have in those areas.
And bringing it back to the quake itself for a moment, 8.9 magnitude.
In the high sixes, so people will still feel it, and you might have follow-up tsunamis, but they won't be as high as the initial tsunami.
Palab, thank you very much indeed. Do stay with us. The seismic wave that we've just been talking about is indeed rippling out across the Pacific. So we're going to go around the region, get the very latest from different points. We'll start on the island nation of Vanuatu, where the wave is expected to hit in the next hour or so. We can speak to Stevenson Liu from the island's Broadcasting Corporation. Stevenson, what are you hearing about the tsunami and the impact it may have in Vanuatu?
Vanuatu is made up of a lot of tiny islands also. Up north we have the Torres Group, and those are the islands most vulnerable in a situation like that. Unfortunately, we haven't heard as to how the evacuation or the relocation of there is taking place at the moment. It's quite isolated, and from what we've received so far, a lot of people are actually calling us from inland. They've moved away from the coast, and that is exactly what the National Disaster Management Office wishes to see happening to a lot of coastal areas.
But to be clear, right now, Stevenson, are people being told to evacuate, to go to emergency shelters, or what is happening across your island nation?
Exactly, that is exactly what they're being told to do. Unfortunately, we don't have proper shelters for such a situation, but they are being told to move inland and to do a much higher ground.
Stevenson Liu in Vanuatu, thank you very much for joining us. We, of course, We'll keep up to date with what is happening there and in the many Pacific islands and across the Pacific region. Palab Ghosh, you just heard Stevenson there saying, frankly, in his island, there isn't really a proper emergency procedure. It's very difficult. It's so spread out, and they don't have the infrastructure. That's going to be a problem in many of these Pacific areas, isn't it?
Well, that's right. Since the tsunami of 2004, procedures were developed to set up an early warning system. What different groups of people do about that early warning, you can't control. There isn't the infrastructure. People will just have to make their own decisions as to what to do. One of the problems is that in some of these areas, people simply don't want to leave their land. They don't want to leave despite the possibilities that might happen if a tsunami does hit them.
And I suppose if you haven't experienced a tsunami before, and if you do not have a television and watch these extraordinary images that we can see, then you might not believe a loudspeaker warning or a radio warning saying, please, everybody, move to higher ground, safer ground. You might just think it was an exaggeration until you see the pictures.
Exactly. So we'll just have to hope that people are heeding the warning. It may be, the early indications are that it may be that the tsunami won't be as bad as feared, but you've just got to put safety first in these situations because, as I said, if it's a low-lying island, if the topography is all wrong, then the tsunami could hit and hit hard.
All right, Palab Ghosh, thank you very much indeed. We are receiving word that very soon the British Foreign Secretary, William Hague, may be talking about the situation in the Pacific region, so we'll go there if he does. But for now, one of the other countries threatened by the tsunami is the Philippines. We can go live to Manila to Richard Gordon, who's chairman of the Philippines Red Cross. Richard Gordon, you've heard what's happening elsewhere. What's happening in the Philippines right now?
Right now, we have about 19 provinces on the Pacific coastline on total alert right now, and many of them have evacuated to higher ground. I'm pretty happy about that because at least we're not taking any chances or putting any people at risk because it's better to err on the side of safety. And at the moment, I understand that we have had our fourth wave pass by off the coast of Cagayan province, which is on the northeastern side of the Philippines, and we're still expecting 2 more waves. This is monitored by our Philippine volcanology and geological services.
Is likely to be hit.
And of course Japan has a massive government debt.
Yeah, that is the big problem. Look, in the short term, economists have told us that this will knock about 1% off GDP, and of course the worry is the billions that it's going to cost to repair all of this it'll put further pressure on the government's finances.
Aaron, thank you.